So, tuning is really, really, really broad, right? We've got all sorts of things we can cover. If there's anything that you guys have specific questions on, we can pinpoint and say you've had past experiences or something that has affected you that you'd want to go over. We can start with that. Because if I jump in and say like an engine's air pump and I explain how, I think we're gonna be good in a second.
You're getting something there.
And explain how certain things function given a different ECU or fuel configuration or how we're controlling these different things, it can get out of hand and very complex very quickly. I don't want to make this confusing, I want to make this educational. So, does anyone have any experiences or input that you want to start with? No. Wow, all right, this is gonna be fun. Okay, so I'm gonna start off here and show you guys, I opened up 4 different softwares on this computer. We've got Adaptronic, Link, Haltech, and Mtron. These are kind of the interfaces on a fuel table and how I'd be looking at this as a tuner, okay? Now, there are so many critical things for rotaries that are very specific to what these engines require. One thing that's very precise, if we all looked at the center iron, is where the fuel injectors are. So at the time when the fueling is coming in, because it's actually in the block. And so when we change to our secondaries, those are in the intake manifold, right? The distance of that could change for different models. Difference of that can change for different applications. And all of these things for injection timing, when we're injecting the fuel, is going to affect how the engine's running. To get into depth, or to not get overly into depth, a fuel model, if we were to look at this VE for the Adaptronic one on the left-hand side over here, this guy, we have our vacuum down here, where my mouse is pointing. And then we have our boost over here, and then the engine's RPM is on the X-axis here. And then for me as a tuner, I'd be looking at our parameters of engine RPM and certain things here. And this curve for speed density is measuring in regards to the volumetric efficiency of an engine. Now, if we had a mass airflow car like the RX-8s, those are doing that for us. We have an actual mass value of air that's measured. And if we want to have a target fueling, let's say we want the stoichiometric air-fuel ratio of 14.7 to 1, we would have a multiplication off of the grams per second of airflow off of that mass airflow. It injects the amount of fuel to make that target happen. And then your engine will always work in a perfect operating, and it won't look anything like this. It's just going to be base calculated off of the sensors on the engine. So what that means is the easiest thing to look at is the engine will be best when you have the sensors it needs for the computer to operate how it needs to interpret the data. So the more sensors we have for certain things, the better idea of what the engine needs to operate. And then how we're interpreting that data will make it further precise. And when you have precision, you can push things harder and you can make more power, because now things are repeatable. And then you can find those limits slowly.
At what point in the food chain are you expecting this kind of analysis?
Day one, that's the problem.
Well, see, you're not going to find this at Pep Boys. So where this is more of a amateur or professional racing tool than it is diagnostic for just somebody that has an RX-7?
So
you're not going to find this in a shop in the county somewhere.
No. And the thing that I try to do is, for all of my clients, I spend time with them to make sure they understand their cars. So like, I'll open all this stuff up. If we look at the right-hand side where I'm moving the mouse, I'll show them certain things like, if we see anything like this flashing, highlighting, creating an error code up here on this top right, or anything that is not operating in a normal scenario, we can, obviously they call me, and then I can diagnose with them to show. So I'll have something like fuel pressure and then fuel pressure differential. And it'll tell you if your fuel filter is going bad, right? So we have, when we go to set fuel pressure, we'll have our regulator with the vacuum line off of it, so we know what the engine's supposed to be making for fuel pressure. When the vacuum reference is onto that line, it's going to be pulling vacuum when the engine's operating idle, and that's going to create something to where the fuel pressure differential is now corrected to be, because the vacuum's pulling the fuel into the engine by itself. So we need to lower the base pressure on the regulator down to actually match the differential that we started with. And same thing in boost. So now fuel has to inject against a boost pressure. So the regulator has to increase in pressure to accompany the boost. So to better answer what you're saying, this is not gonna be a Pep Boys thing. The individual clients are gonna learn about their cars at their skill level that they want to. And then I try to make certain things to bridge gaps for other specifics for what they need. It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
It's not something that everyone can grasp, and it's not an A to B. It's very much like you're jumping into a calculus 4 class. Good luck. Yeah, so that's why I was like, if anyone has specifics, we can kind of get something. But I don't know. This is kind of what the engine's airflow would look like if we were to flow through like a, what do you call it, like a super float bench, whatever it's called. That's what a port would look like for this engine. So it's going to be less efficient at low velocity. And then it's going to be more efficient in this mid-range area. And then when the velocity keeps peaking up, it's losing efficiency. That port is starting to roll over in its efficiency. So that is a good shaping of what that would look like. If I were to do the same shape on this one, I'll just pull this over. This one, see this big hump back here, guys? The reason why this has this hump here is because the injection data on the secondary injectors, they're flowing more than they're expected to be flowing. That's partially because they're not idealized for this vehicle's engine control. So each ECO has its own injector driver that controls things differently, which makes things even more complicated. But the shaping you can see here is due to injector data being off. Okay. If you ever were to see a mapping that was, let's just say, not smooth like either of these two, they probably have something modeled extremely wrong. Like, probably don't want that, because an engine should be a very smooth flow. If your port has a big jump in it and you see a big jump in your map, you know, that's different, but for the most part, they're pretty smooth, even this. Go here. I think what we should start with is, what is the first step you want to take when you have your engine fully assembled and you're trying to figure out where I should start my car? Well, we're going to go through and you would see every sensor data. Let's say we have our coolant temp and our air temp and our map sensor. We key on the car and we see these certain numbers. If our coolant temp is showing 200 degrees and the car's been off, sensor data is incorrect, right? All right. If we see our map sensor value at 5 PSI boost and we're sitting at sea level, that's not right either. So we go through and we're going to make sure all of our sensor data is correct first. Once we've established we have a crank annual sensor data by turning off the fuel injectors and trying to crank the car, that's going to do two things for us. We're going to see oil pressure on our sensor, and we're going to see RPM on the engine's RPM here. That's going to show two things to look at that we've confirmed those two sensors are working as well. We can now either grab a timing light and time the engine with just starter RPM of 250 or so, or we can start the engine, normalize everything, and lock the ignition timing to make sure that the ECU offset for it thinks the timing is here, but is it? So we use a timing light on either leading or trailing one, depending on the crank angle sensor, and we're going to match the ECU to make sure that it's reading exactly where it's supposed to be. So for instance, a turbo 2 block has -5 and -20, also known as 5 degrees ATDC and 20 degrees ATDC for ignition timing for our pulley for yellow and red. We would use our leading coil 1, and we would have that clamped, and we would watch and make sure that our clamp is, our front cover lighting is hitting the pin of the motor with the pulley on the yellow pin. If it is offset, we offset it on the ECU, we don't offset it on the car. That way the ECU is reading what the car is supposed to be reading, and everything is now in sync. And those are kind of the first basics of starting up a car and how to identify if there are any problems before you get started. Looking at all your sensors, looking at certain data sets.
So for the REW, it already has a cast sensor, right?
Yes.
So it's already pretty much preset. You don't have to really mess with. It's something that the ECU will pick up.
So here, this is a FFE trigger wheel, right? But if we were to put this to the REW, this will kind of have a preset. All these ECUs, despite companies and their differences, they will have a preset list for different things. So, let's see. There it is. So what that will do is it's going to have, oh, I didn't even set it. That's so funny. It changed, but it didn't change. There we go. So that's going to have 2 reluctor, which are magnet sensors. And the 2 reluctors are going to be on the outside of the wheel, which has 12 windows around it. And then it's going to have a little notch, a little V notch. And then the front cover is going to have a pin. And so this TDC angle of 5 degrees is what I would be adjusting as a tuner to make sure that the V notch is aligning to the front cover pin when we have our trailing clamped. Because the FD has one position only on the wheel. So on this big pulley, this is like a 5-inch pulley, 6-inch pulley, it's going to have 12 windows that give it an idea of location, and it's going to have a singular little triangular point, which I think we might even have might have been one in here. And so because that point is at 20 degrees ATDC and not 5 degrees ATDC like the earlier models, we're using the trailing plug, and we're offsetting our timing in here to -5 with a 15-degree offset. So that would be -5 would be our leading plug, which we don't have a marker for on that pulley. And then -5 with a 15-degree offset makes -20, which now is where the FD would land. So this would be our offset here to adjust to make sure that pin is hitting where that notch is. I don't even know where to jump in from here.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff. So, like, we can go over how throttle bodies work and imagine we've got a pressure imbalance, right? So you've got boost on one end, you've got a throttle body, and you've got the intake manifold, right? So when you open this throttle body, the engine's pulling vacuum, okay, on this side, and this is boosting. Well, when you open this throttle body, you're gonna have a pressure differential that's forcing air into certain locations, and it's gonna be affecting it to a point of, when you gulp a bunch of air, what do you need to go with it? Fuel, right? So we have something in all these ECUs called acceleration enrichment. And right here, this is going to be like a throttle position deadband. So if you guys ever use like a fan for a computer and it just turns on all the time and kind of on, off, on, off, on, off. Well, you set that fan to a larger temperature deadband. The deadband being the part where it stays on a little bit longer than it needs to get back down to its level of being cooled. And with your throttle position sensor, you have the same sort of control. So you're going to not have the throttle position enable an extra amount of fuel until a certain position or until a certain velocity or acceleration. And what that does is it allows the throttle body to open up, just have the airflow before you inject too much fuel and flood the motor out. And you can really hear a difference in engine response when you don't have too much fuel, because if you drown a motor out, it's slower, it makes less power. Lean is mean. So I find it really important to set these sort of deadbands for your transient acceleration to make things work effectively. Throttle bodies and got to accompany the air with fuel, right? And one of the cool tricks is actually drive-by-wire by limiting the amount of airflow that the engine can take in at a certain time. This one, let's see. Oh, it's a perfect example. I've got a drive-by-wire card right here. Let me show you guys what I'm thinking of. So, with the RX-8, you guys already have drive-by-wire, right? So, imagine as a programmer, you can do anything you want for controlling this device. It operates at sometimes at 2,000 times a second, the amount of changes that you can make. Sometimes it's 8,000, sometimes it's 20,000 times a second, but this can operate a throttle blade extremely quickly, way faster than we can interpret as human beings, right? So I can set a throttle position-based limitation to where when you go to accelerate, instead of it getting all the air all the time, if you have a mechanical throttle body, you go wide open throttle, it's all there. But the engine can't consume all of that air. So you're going to have something to where you have this lag, because now you've had to add extra fuel for all the extra air that you've added, and the engine's not going to be able to accelerate. So on drive-by-wire, I can reduce the amount of opening on some sort of scalar, like RPM. How effective is that, right? So we know that at a certain RPM, the engine can only consume so much. And so at 3,000 RPM, it might only need, in this case, 67.5% throttle to get optimal power. So why would we want to open up more and lose velocity of the engine?
So even if you were flooring it, that throttle body's only going to open 16% or whatever, okay? And gradually increase as it can handle the airflow.
That's right. And so on the dyno, I'm limiting this until I lose power. And then what it's doing is I'm gaining this whole point of response, because now when you dump a throttle open, you can have old car, carbureted, anything you want. If you dump the throttle open, it stalls, but you feather it in and it's faster. We're feathering in our throttle.
Yeah.
And so what that's doing is it's only giving it the amount of airflow that the engine needs for that point. And so you don't have to inject as much fuel, which means it's running cleaner. You're getting better gas mileage, better engine response, and you have this effect that you're getting the power potential without any drawbacks. So, throttle bodies are cool. We can do a lot of cool shit with that. So, do we have any questions, I think? No? Where should I jump in next?
Now, with this one being a drive-by-wire, what about for a mechanical operated like throttle body?
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
As you open the throttle, you chase it with fuel.
Oh, okay.
And then you're trying to identify the injection point when that fuel changes for a given load. So like boost or vacuum at a given RPM, or injected duty cycle. You can do it a bunch of different ways. So this is actually my tune file. If I go in here to injection angle, this efficiency calculation on this top here, this is like our boost pressure, okay? 100 is atmospheric. And then we have engine RPM. So this is telling me that at this load of the engine, the timing in which the fuel is injected is different versus when it's under vacuum. When it's under vacuum, it's pulling that fuel in faster by itself. Okay. This is working against boost pressure. So the timing is going to change. And the optimization with the throttle body, whether it's mechanical, is going to come back to also optimizing when the fuel is coming in, right? Because you can dump up in the throttle and it's slow. You can feather in, it's fast. So the factory FD and FC have progressive throttle bodies. The primary is going to be opening up maybe 30% before the secondary is even start. What that does is it forces air into only the primary ports. It has a reversion effect inside of the intake manifold, and then when it starts to open, that reversion bounces back and starts to actually affect the initial pulse of the secondary. It's actually pretty brilliant. So the Moz intake manifolds are really, really well done.
The secondaries are smaller ones?
Secondaries are the larger 50 millimeter on top.
Okay.
So on the FC, it's flipped.
Oh.
Primary is the top,
Okay.
and then the secondaries are the two bottom. And then the FD is going to be the primer and the bottom and the two tops.
Yes, like that.
So, does that kind of help?
You had to bomb my shot. She photobombed my whole video right there. Thank you all for letting me walk through. Sorry.
I don't know. I can cover the whole shebang. So
What about the spark plug timing afterwards?
I can look at the ignition timing and show you what's up.
What are you doing? You ready to fall?
So like, let's see if I can make this a little bigger real quick. So much like, here I'll show this. This is better. So much like with fueling, if your ignition curve is flat, it's probably not optimized. If you're able to throw, actually even better, distributors used to have vacuum advance, mechanical advance, certain things like that. When you hear of a locked distributor timing, that's usually only effective for a large displacement engine that has pretty much a large piston volume, right? On a small displacement engine, it's going to be more effective for gaining torque when you have a change in ignition timing. Okay, so throw the numbers out. Just understand the very simple fact that we have a small displacement engine that we're trying to accelerate. And so that's going to call for a different ignition timing at a different RPM and a different load, right? So these, I've seen some YouTubers say stuff like, I run blank degrees, blank, blank, blank all the time. And if you do that, you're missing out on what could be effectively cooler temperatures, safer combustion events, or the same power for any combination. And something that has a curve to it will be smooth to drive, and it will be safer, just straight out. So, yeah, ignition timing is something that's very important, and I guess on Rotary specifically, we have split timing. That's the difference between our leading and trailing. Now, when those are closer together, it's a more aggressive setup. So if we have a 5-degree split, that means our leading could be 14 degrees, and then our trailing is 5 degrees away from that. That's going to be a much more aggressive timing than if we had a 15-degree split. Okay, that would be, it's trailing, so it's after. So BTDC is before top dead center, ATDC is after. We would be after chasing the leading timing by a larger margin. When you run a larger split timing, the downside of that is you're going to create more heat. Okay, more heat can be good for some things like spooling a turbine. Turbines love to be pumped with a bunch of heat, so that you have thermal expansion to make all the retardants shrink. So that's when you can use a larger split timing to get your boost in faster. And ignition timing for Rotaries is, I don't want to say it's black art, it's definitely like pretty scientific and clean and curved. It makes sense. But is there anything specific you have in mind?
No, I was just wondering, compared to like a piston engine where you only have one spark plug and then the split timing, you know, like it's better to perform as RPM increase. You know, you're decreasing the time between each. Pretty much that's what we're doing too, right? And then while you're idle, your timing is gonna be a little more further apart because the engine's been slower, right? Optimize the burn rate and everything too.
Yep. So we can shift that around. I think I've got a pretty good one here to show you. So if we look at this table, what I'm doing here, this is actually what I use for a lot of different motors, but what I'm doing here is our idle has about an 8-degree split. And our idle on this motor was something like 14 inches of mercury. And so it was sitting right about here at 1,000 RPM. And when you go to crack the throttle, you're coming into a boost region right here. This is our 0 PSI boost region. And I'm adding split to this engine, which is actually doing the opposite of what you would think. I'm doing this to spool the turbo.
Oh, okay.
And this is designed to where I'm pumping heat into the exhaust manifold, into the turbine housing, to spool this turbo harder. It's to the point of, I want response. I'll take the heat deficit because it's low enough RPM, it's not going to be hurting anything. And then I'm pulling it out when I get into boost. So this is I think it's a very complex strategy compared to what I've seen mostly used from others, and it's worked very well for me. I get all the drivability with no drawbacks, with no heat issues, and it seems to be smooth and very repeatable. But you'll see some people will run, 15 degrees timing here of split. And I think that the power loss for doing that and the exhaust gas temperature gain is not worth it. And to me, I'd much rather have a cooler exhaust and run less boost and make more power for that boost. Because you can chase, let's say you're chasing a number of 500 horsepower and you need to have maybe 18 pounds of boost with less spark split to make that. And then you need to have 22 pounds of boost with 15 degrees of timing of split to make it. So I would prefer having less heat, less boost, same power. Why work things harder than you need to? So it's one of the things where you need to sit down and figure out what the vehicle is being used for and the optimizations that call out for that vehicle type. So I always ask way too many questions, and I say like, okay, well, we're using the car for this, this, and this. Let's figure out how you drive. I'll watch how you drive. I'll see certain things. Okay, based on how you're driving, we can do certain things here that will work to your benefit and not against you. So, I told you guys, tuning's out there.
And I'm sure compared to an NA setup, the time is going to be, the way you do time is going to be a little different than the one with the boosted setup. Right?
Yes. And it's, NA's interesting. Like, I did a car in Michigan, it's 10,000 RPM, little rally car. And just
my 8,000 pound engine on sacrifice.
the smallest little changes do nothing, and then you get something just perfect, and it takes off in power. And it's very unique to NAs like that. So you can have something, you make like the tiniest little change, and all of a sudden it just comes into harmony and lights up. And boosted stuff, you can try to do that, but you can also rely on your turbo to carry it. So what a lot of tuners will do is the car will be totally pig-rich, ugly to drive, out of boost, and they use the boost to clean up the car. And it's, to me, I'd rather optimize the engine first and then add boost, which makes a lot more sense as far as like durability and keeping things, I don't know, lasting. So, anyone else would jump in?
How good are the new ECUs versus the older ones, like the Power FCs and Microtechs?
Could you ask that question one
That's
more time?
okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the newer ECUs like Haltech, I guess Adaptronic, how much more potential do they have versus the older ones that have limited functionality and stuff?
So we can think of it as control, right? So let's say, oh geez, what's a good analogy for this? When you can repeat the same thing over and over again, you can push the vehicle further, because now you have temperature optimizations for, say, elevation change, for heat, you know, summer, winter. Obviously we don't have that too much over here, but on a modern ECU, we have so much more control data to work off of to make it better. And they also have stuff like engine protections. So I'll show you right here. Go to our, engine protections. So if we're to lose a sensor, let's say our air temp has a little dongly thingy inside of it, breaks off inside the intake. Happens all the time in the fast acting ones. Don't run those. They're terrible. I'll explain why. But let's say, for instance, we lose air temp. And our air temp sensor, which I'll bring up right here, has a protection on it. And the protection is when the sensor goes to 0 volts or 5 volts, in other words, it got disconnected or broken or something, hit this DTC, which is drive time cycle, whatever they call it, of, let's say, level 1. What that's going to do is when the engine senses this fault, or let's say the sensor overheated, it's going to add fuel, reduce timing, reduce boost. You're going to be fine. You're going to know the car drives differently and say, hey, my car drives slow. What the hell happened? It's going to pop up. You're going to have a flashing check engine light. You're going to have something that's wired in and say, hey, something's wrong.
Self-preservation mode.
Self-preservation mode is enabled. And the vehicle is going to say, you're going to be fine. We can limp you home, but we're not giving you any power. And just because of that,
That's nice.
we'll make it fine. We can fix the problem, move forward. And the engines and the check engine protection sort of thing is the main benefit of a modern ECU. Beyond the fact that we have like full injector data and countless sensor data that we can optimize for the vehicle. So like I have on this thing, injector data. If the fuel pressure, let's say I had a base pressure of 60 PSI. Well, if our fuel pressure gets clogged by a fuel filter flow problem, or our alternator kicks off and we're only making 10 volts, well, this is able to compensate. The Power FC can do that. So this will compensate by throwing extra fuel in, given our pressure differential, voltage, whatever the situation is. The modern ECU can do this, past ones could not. And it's just technology moves forward.
So you mentioned there was like levels to this based on like your sensor condition or whether it detects voltage or not, or if it detects a certain assigned parameters. So that was, if level 1 is basically just limp mode, what does 2 and 3 mean?
So this is going to be different for each ECU. Haltech has 3 levels of engine protections, and these are just what they call like severity levels, right? So we've got here, I have 0.2 lambda, actually 0.2 AFR, 25% boost correction, 5-degree retard, and then I have a limiter at 4,500 RPM, and I also, because this car is drive-by-wire, also reduced the total drive-by-wire opening. So if you went wide open, you can only go 75% of the setting. Now, if you had hit level 2, let's see, let me do that. I'll skip to level 3 because it's displaying weird for you guys. I don't want to screw it up. if we hit level 3, it's going to be much more fuel as the now new target is now offset for fueling. It completely turns off the boost controller. It throws 12 degrees of retard into the ignition timing, and then now you're limited to 3,000 RPM and 30% drive-by-wire. So this specifically has 3 engine protection levels, and then there's actually cylinder shutdown, which we won't use for rotaries, but it would technically have 4. So each engine control, whether we have, let's say we've got Adaptronic, like these have rev limiter, overboost, fuel pressure, stuff like that. These controls are gonna have 1 limitation for engine protection. We really only need 1, right? If something's wrong, hit this, stop the car. Identify, know what it is, whatever it is, tell the owner. So as long as we have something, it's still moving us into a better approach than something that can't read the sensor data to tell us that the car is not happy.
One more thing. So I was watching one of Rob Dobbs' videos, and he essentially used a throttle body as a wastegate. I mean, he said he did it through the Haltech somewhere, so in theory, could use the same data that's coming into your ECU to connect to a microcontroller or an external microcontroller like an Arduino to power the throttle body to be used in that kind of way.
So I'm gonna open up my car right here. I'll show you guys what I have. See if it just pops up in an internet search, because that would be, oh, there's no internet. So, are you talking about on the
I've got the
exhaust
password
side?
for the wireless here if you want
I
it.
might use that. It might be pretty cool to show you guys. So are you talking about on the exhaust side of the engine, or are you talking about on the intake side next to the turbo?
He was using a throttle body meant for high-heat applications as a wastegate. So
on a wastegate.
Yeah.
So that is actually the newer Turbo Smart straight gate with the controller.
Okay.
I thought you meant on the charge side of the turbo, which is the intercooler side. Like on my car, I have a drive-by-wire right next to the turbo. So instead of a blow-off valve, it opens a separate drive-by-wire to blow off to make sure that I have no surge limitation coming into boost. We can talk about what surge is for the boost as well. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to come up with an option of once it goes in of either the room number or there's another button and go to the access code. Yeah, click on access here. That's asking for your name. You want to go to the
Yeah,
there you go.
It's like really small in mine.
I know, well, it's real small,
It to
yeah.
5,000 and something.
Some developer that thought it was really cool to make it really small numbers. Those lettering.
So I thought we were talking about this. Oh, go for it. Of course it doesn't open properly.
To get your seal approval, I will send them in my motor.
So my car has a drive-by-wire on between the turbo and the intercooler. That's what I thought you were saying.
Okay.
What you're saying is electronic wastegate.
Yeah.
It's same effect. It's not in development really past the Mtron staff. So these guys here, Mtron, they're one of the bigger, like, well, not bigger. They're one of the most advanced ECU companies on the market, and they developed with Turbo Smart that electronic wastegate. So you're talking about this guy right here. So we're gonna go Turbo Smart. So this thing right here is really not optimized yet. We are too early in development for it to be consistent. And as much as people are trying to push these, then the market is not ready for it. The only company that controls it properly is this one, the one that actually developed it with them. So personally, I would say avoid electronic boost control until another generation or two. It's not ready. So for consistency, standard Gen 5 wastegate from TurboSmart's amazing. Running 3-port max solenoid, you can run one on the top, one on the bottom if you wanted to. You have controlling a much wider range of usage. But definitely, this is not ready for mass market. It's kind of like a beta product, so we don't want that. At least for consistency and safety of your engine.
Are you seeing, since ECUs can't control so much, are you seeing more people use auxiliary injection? Like methanol stuff?
Yeah. Personally, I would say water meth, you're losing so much unless you have it properly injected. And what I mean by that is with the solenoid into the turbo volume, and I can actually show you guys what I mean by that. When water meth is injected, you're going to lose power because you're injecting this, and then the wideband is going to interpret it differently. So the target that the wideband is now targeting is going to be skewed based on the methanol that's in the fuel. So auxiliary injection instead of going auxiliary injection, ethanol is the way to go. Ethanol cools. It can't be detonated. It's amazing. It is the best fuel for everything. It cleans everything. So you can't get carbon positive.
So if I recall, when you showed us your tables before, you mentioned that when you were the zero freeze level, you preferred to have everywhere except for the zero freeze level, you're trying to get like a cooler exhaust temperature or a cooler exhaust temperature, and then when you're at zero boost, you try to obviously heat it up at that point. So in that point, you're just looking to increase the exhaust.
So the point is the turbine housing heats up. You get a boost soon. That's why you run a turbo.
A lot of nefarious activities and people.
We're getting traffic.
I can't get where
Yeah, I get it. Who doesn't run? Especially that guy calling himself Felix White.
You run a turbo blanket
The guy's dead.
to keep heat into your turbine to increase response time.
Yeah, we're
That's
gonna
to increase the
Response time.
along with the
so it's causing the
just one side of the air fall in like the dead.
A blanket is an
He's
insulation.
my Jerry Garcia.
So
He's the Rotary Jerry Garcia.
if we are
Yeah, we're all gonna take ass in the parking lot before it's
keeping
bad.
exhaust hot,
Definitely going.
only when we want that. The engine's safer when we don't. Mushrooms
How about mushrooms?
likewise, right?
Imagine
And then when we're trying to build boosters, so that's That's effective. That's my IP. That's my intellectual property, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I have a ramping designed to generate power to make sure that spools as fast and hard as possible.
You really had an ass.
I will get in touch with you about the ECUs. Thank you. Thank you guys for everything. Appreciate it.
So it's like that's something you'll never learn elsewhere. It's kind of
Thank you.
an intellectual property thing.
Have a
right?
good drive home.
And you do that because you're trying to build a boost as fast as possible to widen your power band. I can bring up a bunch of diagrams and kind of show. Here, I'll go to my.
They left the block.
Yeah,
They logged out.
This is right where this is. Let's see if this works. This might not work, but if it does, awesome. Okay.
Careful, parking my
So
car.
we can go.
Right? My girl's been in the hand. Shameful. Shameful.
On a diagram. If we're looking at this, we're saying I want to optimize this turbo for
Who's second gen
the
turbo?
widest area that I can, area under the curve.
Is that yours?
This is not running the same boost pressure across this whole map. I made this artificially by changing the boost pressure. Naturally, this engine would have nosed over at 6,200 RPM, 6,800 RPM, somewhere around there. And what I did instead is I ran boosted on the top end to handle it safely. When an engine's moving, you have inertia. It's safer to go and add more boost, simply because it's already rotating, so you have less load more effectively on what's happening. Versus when you're spooling up, you're going to be surging the turbo up to a certain point. And you're also going to be trying to spin very heavy rotating assembly, as you guys have all felt the last couple of days. These rotors aren't exactly wrong. So the reason why I say we want to generate this as fast as possible is now we have a beautiful ramp coming up here.
And that's spooling up the
Yeah, I had to change mine too.
And some people have a really lazy kind of like gradual ramping. If I can make more down low and it likes it, I'm gonna do it. Because you're gonna feel it when you're driving. Listen, 3,500 RPM makes 250
I won't do
torque.
that.
So that's more than factory by a massive amount at 3,500 RPM.
Yeah.
So factory engine, by the way, for OEW. If you guys ever drove an FD, it's like 215 wheel. 215. And torque is like 185. So you're 40% over that at 3,500 RPM. So you're gonna enjoy it, right? Let's see.
Now, I'm pretty sure the size of the turbo will have a effect too, right? Like on some smaller one, you might be dropping it off way before it'd be spooled out or something like that, compared to the bigger one.
Yeah.
What are some common rotor specific issues on the mechanical side that you run into while you're tuning?
Good question. Usually it's old sensors. So like crank angle sensor is a huge one. So the engine might lose sync. It might happen. The front cover sensors are 35 years old, 30 years old. And that's the number one failure for engines. The worst thing is power C. It'll read it fine and then it doesn't read it the next day. Or that next rev. And it's that like that. So that's.
It makes that noise and the apex seals go right out the exhaust.
No, it goes silent. You're like, oh, my car's so quiet now. What happened?
Yeah.
Oh. One thing that's actually really cool is Link. I already closed it, but Link and Imtron have like this crazy good crank angle sensor problem. So like, not problem. If it were to lose sync, it just stalls the engine or just like cold. Like it understands where it used to be and then it remembers where it was. It kind of keeps going. It's very weird synchronization. Some computers lose the sync and it's going to try revving it, but it can. That's what I should tell you. The whole point of a crank angle sensor is locating where the engine is. You guys set top dead center, right? Everyone set top dead center? Well, imagine the engine suddenly forgets where it goes. Where's the combustion? Where's the spark gonna happen? Where's the thing? It doesn't know. So it's randomly misfiring the engine. And that's why that sensor is the number one failure point. Other stuff is always factory related. The O2 sensor being too close to the turbo, so being too hot.
I mean, like, I imagine something like you would have the Jelly Belly tours and just got people, you know, showing
sometimes bad fuel.
Sorry, I am sorry.
Bad fuel systems. So we have like filtration is a huge thing. All of our fuel systems are huge, right? You guys have seen our injectors. We have half the injection time to play with.
I flipped it over and
Which means we need twice the fuel and we need twice the spark. Because our spark doesn't have the amount of dwell time to make the energy like other systems work. An Ignition 1A on a V8 can handle way more power because it has twice the time to charge than we have.
That's why spark coils fill up pretty fast.
Because we have to run them at much higher duty to maintain any reasonable spark energy. So it's a lot of weird stuff. Like,
Can't bag apart.
for instance, this is a 20.
That would be the real life. I mean, you know that like you've
Like
stacked
22
it for-
PSI car
You're
that
gonna
needs
be
600 horsepower.
Who knows?
Right.
It kind of looks
Totally
like
possible.
the right move.
Totally
That
doable.
weird.
Good porting,
It's kind of funny though. So
good
that's a
turbo,
real life thing. Like,
really good
I
fuel
was
system.
in my life, I
But
built a motor and I was looking
when we
for it,
don't
and I'm like,
respect the fuel system, it's going to bite us. Because it is huge for these cars.
no, it's okay. You can
So
do
we
it
need to
before you
oversize
do it.
things. We need to go brushless before everyone else. It's outrageous, but it's effective. Fuel temperature is a huge thing because fuel will always start to boil. And when fuel boils, it's not consistent, that's for damn sure.
You get people out, you can't start your engine for an hour.
You get pre-ignition when the fuel gets hot. And things go pop. So imagine you had 3 fuel pumps that are always on. Well, what's that doing? It's bringing fuel up into the engine bay. It's getting hot. It's coming back again. It's getting hot. It's coming back again. Because your pump ends up feeling hot because all it's doing with the original standard brushed pumps is spinning constantly. Brushed setup by contrast is varying on a pulse width. And it's not adding heat to the system as much as a standard pump would. So I've seen fuel temperatures drop like 20, 30 degrees. I'm going from 2 standard pumps to 1 brushless pump, which is a huge difference. Fuel starts to boil. I actually have it right here.
You're gonna get the thing unstacked and restacked before I even finish with 1 rotor, so don't even calm that everything down.
Use that. Might not have it here still.
This is like your 4th time, man. Like, you gotta know this thing in and out by now. In the zone.
That's not even zoomed in.
That
Point was that
I have my own engine to work on.
the fuel boiling is very critical for especially EFI. And it's going to start boiling and then it cavitates and then it creates damage everywhere.
We sold like the airplane to somebody, but we bought that person too.
Is there anything else you guys were thinking of I can just jump on real quickly? Or let's see, I can show you some examples. Like this. So like how to make a bunch of drivability out of the car.
I mean, like, what about like ECU options for people that are, of course, we have a mixed bag here, right? We got people that are going to be daily driving, street boarded, or we've also got people here that are like, full on race cars, So what kind of ECU management system do you suggest for like, the pretty much general public, I guess you could say, not general public, but
So
depending on our application,
Right. So and that's the thing is, we all even drive differently. So the way that you drive and your budget and your car, all these are different things that might pinpoint you to a different application. Let's say someone went and drag raced their car. That's all they used it for. Well, something like Fuel Tech has a bunch of drag racing specific things. It's not very good for daily driving, terrible on fuel economy, not the most consistent thing in the world, but it's good at drag racing, right? And then we've got, stuff like Adaptronic before all the electronics went bad was actually pretty good at controlling the engine. Haltech, Link, those are really good for just catching up on just about everyone. It'll cover the application well. It'll get you the drivability you're after. It's consistent. The fuel models are good. You've got stuff that's higher end like Motec. Those are amazing if you really want to get the most out of your setup. And you want something that's more geared towards, I use this for motorsport, I use this for whatever. Those are going to give you more controls if the tuner knows what they're doing and knows how to jump in and use those. And it's just kind of it really depends on the setup, right? You can overdo it, you can underdo it, but ideally we set something up to where your needs are met, you have enough sensor data to play with, but you also don't need to spend it on a lake to get a good setup.
So for the majority of us that are just probably gonna run a most likely a street port, maybe some bridge porting or whatever, and then with daily driving it, like what would your recommendation be for just an intermittent software?
So a very common one that I do is Haltech Lead 1500. You could do a flex fuel sensor off that. You could do oil pressure, fuel pressures, light in. Basic stuff, right? And you got your coolant temp, air temp, boost control. All that will work for a basic setup, and you still have all the availability to run in the future. If you wanted drive-by-wire, that ECU will still handle it. If you wanted certain other controls like anti-lag off of a clutch switch, it will still handle it. So it's just expensive enough to cover all your bases, but it gets way better control than what most people are.
So, I'm a college student, so obviously I don't have much money, and I'm part of a club for my school's motorsports program, and we're looking to get into like tuning that kind of stuff, but we never really explore it because when we look at the stuff online, they talk about like Haltech and all these other ECUs, but they're not like affordable. So really, like the cost of entry to start isn't the at least like the well documented ones aren't within our price point. So what do you recommend? Like if we wanted to start with
Getting a sponsor.
Yeah.
It's one of the things where there's a slippery slope of doing it wrong will cost you more. So budget for it, make it happen, get it done, and it'll last forever.
And then if we're just starting out, like what do you recommend? Like if we want to start tuning a rotary, what do you recommend we start with, like as an easier platform to learn, like the basics of the tuning software we're on, and what kind of environment do you think that the car should be in for us to make a steady learning approach for it?
So we're doing this as an educational base for, I'm assuming, classroom? Project,
Car
like
club
a
or whatever.
car club, okay.
Car club.
Something like an Adaptronic would be the easiest to start with. Even the most, I'll say, dumbass tuners are fine with Adaptronic. And I could probably connect you to someone who's selling one. So we're talking like $800.
That's spot on, because you go to the Honda side and then an actual ECU tune, you can tune options, like K-Pro's like $900, so.
Well, that S300 is still $600.
Yeah, so that's about right for the entry points. About.
But I mean, it was a 14-1500 ECU, but because they've all failed, and because all the ignition boards keep failing for people, that's why they're going down in value, because Haltech's not going to support them. They have no warranty, they have nothing, but you're going to have, I think, a pretty good fuel model to play with. And it's going to show you, like, there's certain functions, like a trace function, so.
And this you're saying Adaptronics?
Yeah, I mean, like, for the car club thing, this is going to make sense. So, like, if I were to go run this car, and I click this T button here, this whole thing just went white. You guys see that? So what happens is this is going to show a different color depending on how far off the fueling is from my target. So as a class, you guys can actually look at this together and be like, okay, this is dark blue, it's really rich. This is red, it's very lean. This is going to hurt the engine, I need to go fix this. Right? So you create a shape based on that. This platform is very easy to use. There's a lot of very well laid out sections, like it goes through ignition, all these certain things. It functions in a very certain way to where even the most daft tuner can figure this one out. Like this is about as easy as it gets to start off with. And I think that that will be effective for what you're trying to do.
What's your recommended platform? What do you like to tune most for?
Right now, I'd say Haltech. I'm actually designing a control setup for fully controls everything. So imagine not needing to. Would that be kind of cool?
Yep.
So the big negative rotary stuff is reliability. And the reliability is actually coming from, usually it's failed components, but ECU couldn't see that it was a failed component. And so like on Power C, I think Power Cs are actually what created the whole rotaries are unreliable thing, because it doesn't know that it fucked up. Bottom line. So if it's just always injecting this amount of fuel, regardless of pressure change, fuel filter, whatever it was, it's not going to realize that it needs something different and shut it down. And my Imtron package that I'm starting, and I'm doing R&D on, which is this software over here. This, it's going to be like God mode for tuning. You're going to have a tune on there that I'll design that is reading all these different sensor inputs, and you'll have differential pressure off of the throttle body. So it's going to say, here's a map sensor on this side of the intake manifold, here's a map sensor on this side of the throttle body. Here's the difference in the pressure. And then it's also measuring air temperature as well. So it knows how much the throttle is open, it knows how much pressure's in there, and then how much fuel to add at any given point for any acceleration, because it's measuring the pressure difference before and after. So beyond that, it's also doing mass airflow based calculation, like in factory. So it's able to measure all these certain things to where the car is just always on point, never having to guess.
Oh, that's so funny.
So you can have a completely different turbo. It's going to say, oh, he's right here. Boop, use this one. And that's what I would like to give. But as of now, Haltech is like gold standard.
So that they can be put away.
A little bit off topic, but is that a program that you're writing yourself, or are you working with someone to write that program?
So Imtron is a very high-end booster. This is actually my 2 files right here. Right.
I bet you could. It's not that hard.
It's not hard. I've written a program on my car, and
I think it's cooler. You should put some more respect on the rotary.
Kind of showcase the power and capabilities of our ECU at their limitations. And the strategies that I've implemented are about as good as you can do. It's fully torque model. So imagine you are requesting on your throttle position that you want to have 20% of your torque output. It doesn't have to open the throttle body 20% output. It's going to adapt everything to always give you that. And being a fully torque modeled computer, it's going to get your ass out of trouble. It's going to, let's say you are going up to Pikes Peak and your elevation is 11,000 feet. Well, it's going to overspin the turbo, and it's going to adapt the fuel model to accompany the air density change. And it's going to make sure everything is always in line with what you're requesting it for torque model output. So on my end, I've implemented all this stuff, but they already had it in their software.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it is.
So you don't really have to write that program. So you can kind of borrow from them.
Yeah. And if you look at their stuff, it's something that is so far beyond who I think everyone else handles in the ECU market. It's the reason why I have it in my car, and I've had it for 4 or 5 years at this point. It's just been a brilliant set of engineers with them. So, and I'm working with their lead tuner and all their lead designers. So it's a very close-knit family, very fun company to work with.
So when you say you're running this program for the tuning, do you mean like you're going into an integrated developer environment, and then you're like going through the code or writing out the code individually, and then saying like if statements, and then processing data from your sensors, and then assigning it to.
So those would be like conditional events.
Yeah.
So I'm writing conditional events, and I'm also doing, let's say, okay, in a modern ECU, if I wanted to make this axis right here for our fuel model, injection duty cycle, I could do that. If I wanted to do effective pressure ratio, well, that could be a calculation on the back end of the ECU. So I can have boost pressure versus back pressure versus atmospheric pressure all being input into this calculation. And the effective pressure ratio can be in relation to the three of those. It doesn't have to be a certain thing, and it can also be based on throttle position as well. So effective throttle area. So I can make any axis I want. So my programming side is I've made what I think will be a package that makes sense to me, to where regardless of how hard or how incorrect things are driven, it will keep you out of trouble. It will make sure the engine is doing the best it can all the time. And I'm using smart programming to make sure that the condition of certain things are all coming in line with what is needed, and not something that is like this, for instance, is just speed density on the Haltech, right? So this is just like boost pressure and RPM, right? You could still set this to every axis, but it doesn't have the amount of control to interpret a secondary formula that I can now use against a table. I can be a lot more diverse in how I build the program. So like a modern engine is measuring actual airflow, mass airflow. Right? I can use that as a sensor. I can use everything into a calculation to create something that is more specialized for what my needs are.
Do you happen to know what
On the end,
language
too patient.
the Harley's for the backend? Because I'm taking computer science at my college in order to learn how to get into these kind of things, but auto industry is like super limited on information.
You'll want to look into Bosch motorsport systems. That'll get you the most dollar for dollar input as far as getting into that. You can also look into Votech, M developer, M1 developer. That'll get you into that as well. That's actually going to give you the coding steps. So I'll repeat that. Votech M1 developer.
So now, okay, now not okay, kind of back on topic now, but like off the shelf stuff, like we were talking before, Versatune or other ECU piggyback stuff like that. What's your thoughts on just kind of having that for just like someone like maybe some of us are just daily driving, maybe just want a little bit more performance because we threw on headers and intake, you know what I'm saying?
So headers and intake don't even touch your seatbelts. The factory ECU will handle it for an RC. When you get to a certain point, pause the edit will probably get you more control than Versatune. That's what you do for an RC. But it's all different when you go to, this is like, kind of what I was showcasing, like, this is when you're going balls to the wall and you want to have a single turbo, a compound turbo, or something that's doing more for the vehicle to pinpoint into this is a weekend warrior, this is a track car, whatever it is, that sort of application. So that's all the ECU requirements will change based on the
So pretty much for someone that's just daily driving and then just a little bolt on and they go with like a whole tag or whatever, that's kind of overkill, right? Pretty much, because But then
but if you're boosted, I wouldn't run factory ECU boosted. It's not safe. So you questions?
No, I'm sorry, I'm so loud. Try not to disturb you. I love what you're doing, man. It's awesome. Just
It's just a big, broad topic.
yeah, but as long as you have an audience, plug away in it. When you're ready to pull the plug, then we call me. You're all good. Thank you.
So, do you happen to do remote tuning?
I would tune around every day.
So,
I work 80-hour weeks.
how would you say, what would you say the difference is between tuning in person versus tuning remote?
Well, the thing is communication. Just like if you're in any sort of relationship, it's communication. So the way that you feel the vehicle and the way that I'm interpreting the data is going to be the difference. And I have enough hands-on experience that I know this probably feels different. I'll say something like on a phone, I was going to have what I said. I'll say like, how does this feel when I change like an A to a B test? Or A and B something. I'll say, okay, do you feel this? And I'll have someone go in throttle, out throttle, in throttle, out throttle sort of thing. And if I see a little hiccup, they might not feel it. But I'll say, did you feel this exact thing when I did this? And the difference is, when I'm remote, I can hyper focus on all the data. When I'm driving a car in the dyno, I have more distraction. Right? When someone else is driving a car in the dyno and I'm remote in, I can have full, like, here, look at all these channels that I'm looking at. So we've got just mid-20s at all times. So 20 something channels I'd be looking at any given point to make sure we don't have an issue. And so when that's all spread out, the attention of being remote might actually benefit, because I can see something that might be that you can't even feel. And the driver's experience might not be my experience. They might not feel something that I can see. Versus a professional driver, like Kyle knows how to drive. We could look at his data set, it would probably be very consistent because he knows exactly what will optimize his driver for this situation. Right? That's where the feel comes into play, the communication and the feeling will come into play for that. So that's a very good question. Anyone else? Anything you guys can think of?
So like on a new tune or something, if somebody, just got an engine built and do you have like a base map, I guess, that you would put in and then run it a little bit,
So
make changes?
I do everything live. When I'm remote tuning, I do every single thing live. You never get like, here's a file, good luck. You know how I
Email in 2 days.
Yeah. And I get that all the time. They're like, oh, so-and-so did this. And I said,
The fact that I only have
whoa, how'd that go? They're like, well, 2 months later, okay, well, we're not going to do that. So what we would do is we'd have a phone conversation. We would have like an email exchange that have all these components on my car. I'll have you fill out a form. I'll say, I want you to go and tell me where certain things are, send pictures, show me grounding. Put that in the book. I have like 5 videos on grounding. I have all these things asked beforehand to make sure that we know what is going on with the car, and then I'm creating a map that might work good for us to start off. So before I start, I think the original first few minutes I talked about like turning off the fuel, going through and making sure we have cranking RPM, we have like all these certain things. Once we get all those identified, then we first start. And I'll adjust everything to the point that you can drive in the car, maybe a little bit of boost, cruising should be good, and then I'll say, well, get 500 miles in it, 2 oil changes, and not see them. And then we'll go through and like actually go to a dyno or go street tune or whatever you want to do, but I'll never leave you blind on the tune. I think that's very important. Because I've seen it. It's not a pretty sight. The car's correcting 20%, it's not reading half the sensors, and they're like, oh, well, you didn't match the wiring to the file that I made. Well, if I didn't remote in and see that, then you're running on 3 sensors instead of running on 12.
So, when you brought up on second, you were going through a list of different numbers for resets. What if you're working on like a completely new one? Like, say, you were working on, you know about the Hayabusa V8s, right? So, what if you're in a situation where they just came out and then you were completely new that motor and there wasn't?
You're using a custom trigger set.
A custom trigger set? So you just
So whatever trigger you put on that car, you drop it in. No big deal. You set the cylinder 1 at top dead center, and you make sure you have a marking where that's located at. You put that in your pulley, just same as everything else.
Okay.
Kyle.
Yes.
Add something.
Huh?
Add something.
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't listening to this one.
Damn it.
What was the topic?
This is a huge topic.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, Ryan, it's a pleasure, and everybody here, it's been a pleasure. I gotta take off. I gotta drive back to Long Beach.
Oh,
so, I gotta get back sometime
Yeah,
tonight.
they make
I'm
airplanes.
around for a couple more minutes, so if anybody needs it, you can let me know. Yeah, no, I already did it, so. Okay, cool.
Still got another RX-8.
Do you see on the news, you was bringing back drivability, just say first?
Yeah, I was listening in earlier, and I was just standing back here nodding my head, going, absolutely. Yes.
It's going to increase drivability.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry, I didn't take the part, but it is so.
The amount of information this is.
Yeah. And you know, there's so many times in my life where I have actually taken apart a motor for that exact reason, and most of the time, it's nothing we do wrong. It is just there's a part on the floor or something, and heaven forbid, you build a motor, put it all the way in the car, and then there's one seal. It's not
it over, so
it does make
it fell out, yeah.
So maybe in the future you start seeing more.
Was that one that was probably looking for? You put some bolts on your shoulder.
I mean, I know all the cars at the top pretty much are both set up, stacks, nothing else. That's on that can be tuned. That's pretty much mechanical side.
That's myself.
Normally, you build and design a setup to work for a specific application.
Yeah, it's just Bridgeport, I'll explain.
Amazing at something. Right, so if you design an engine that wants to be amazing at one thing, or you want to be great at a bunch of So the ECU is only going to control as best it can for certain things, as good as your program can be, right? But it's still always going to be based on mechanical stuff.
Yeah.
Would you rather tune a rotary or a piston?
Rotary is pretty fun. I mean, because it's challenging.
But what's easier though? Piston engine?
Always, but yeah. Rotary is fun.
How did you get into tuning?
I got screwed over.
Really?
Yep.
And then you kind of wanted to do it yourself, right?
Yep. I went to school for engineering aerospace. Might as well use it on something fun.
Oh, there you go. And then in the program, you just back in that you kind of just kind of did it as a hobby or something?
See, I don't call it programming. I call it like calibration. For me, it's not programming the software.
Oh, okay. I thought you were kind of programming the software.
No, because that would be like all back end.
Oh, okay.
This is like I'm front end controlling the engine based on the needs and optimization of what it needs. So like each individual engine is going to have a different thing that it's going to like. I'll pull the file. So like right here, let's just do a comparison here. Pull this out.
Alright, this one only has 2 corners. So if there's one is missing.
I think this will help visually.
How do you charge, like for remote tuning, or?
I do just Zell and like.
But I mean,
I do
charge like
flat rate.
hourly or? Oh.
Yeah,
or
because I
flat
want to
fee?
make sure. Yeah, because I want to make sure that every car gets done to the best of my abilities. And then I do lifetime support.
And what do you charge?
It just depends on the setup.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it'll be flat rate, and it's going to be. Let's see. This one. But that way, it's like lifetime support sort of thing. So
Yeah.
you never have to pay again. It's never like milking the clock sort of thing, which I've seen and I hate.
So, if somebody makes a change to their car or whatever.
Yeah, like I would
They wanna
have them
boost or
discuss it
something.
with me before,
Yeah.
because the idea is if you make big changes like that, it's best just to kind of like, ideally just wait.
So retune?
No, like wait before you make the big changes.
Yeah.
And then we talk about what they could be before you do them. And then
Okay.
we're like, okay, we're gonna do this. Let's stop this right here. And then I'm only gonna charge like a little extra for this
Yeah.
sort of thing. Because if you make a bunch of big changes after the car's already tuned, it's like me starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to show here is you've got two cars. Both of these are street ported. Actually, yeah, both of these are street ported. Not so completely different, right? For fuel. And the way that the one on the right picked up torque faster based on the setup is due to the turbo's design. And I'm calibrating the optimization of this engine. The one on the left has all this fuel and deceleration. And the reason it needed that is because the way that its crankcase set up and its pressures, it was relying on needing more fuel to cool the motor down during
As you're letting off the
deceleration.
gas, it needs.
So these are completely, like, you'd think they're identical looking cars. They sounded close, whatever it was, completely different needs based on the owners and the setup for the turbo and such, and the crankcase ventilation. So that's why I say I calibrate to optimize each individual engine. It's never like,
One
here,
fits all.
use this too, you know, like, which is why the thing I'm trying to do with Intron is like exactly like the weight one, because everything is so different that I'm trying to say like, here's the fix all. And it's such a complex thing to make it do, but I have enough technology dumping into it. There's, on an average engine, we're gonna have, let's say like, I'll show you guys here. So we'll have, so we'll have like, let's say we've got 10 sensors, whatever, that are inputting into the ECU. That's not counting outputs, just inputs. So on the Intron, I have 30. So 3 times like an average engine. Just because I'm like, you know, imagine someone can't fuck it up. So that's why I'm trying to do that sort of thing, just to really drive home. Maybe I can make something that's to the point where no one can hurt it.
That'd be cool.
It'd be different. It's a lot of time, a lot of R&D, but it could be done. Can be done. On the peripheral port stuff, what were you thinking? Do you have a specific thing in mind?
I guess my dream setup would have been a 3-rotor peripheral port, not turbo. I know they're pretty hard. So
I would say keep it carbureted. That's serious. It's always gonna be perfect fuel. You never have to worry about it. I mean, until you go into elevation change. But carbureted, 20B peripheral port, 350 horsepower all day long, reliable.
I don't know if you want to write like.
Always gonna be perfect too, because you just change jets and you're done.
I've been told by someone that on my carbureted car I can put an O2 sensor on it for tuning. And I got to understand that more and what to do.
So we would just look at a lambda table, and based on the fuel you're running, it could be like 100 LL avgas, it could be E85 because you're trying to keep it cooler. We would just look at your O2 sensor, and then we would say it's making the most power here, wide open. How consistent can it be at wide open? And so if you have a progressive carburetor, so you've got a stage and a stage, you can make it to where the jetting is smooth on the transition. You can make it where the jetting is consistently across as far as hitting the same target of AFR.
And you have to do that on a dyno? Or can you do it static sitting there?
You can do it driving around.
Yeah, well, only time we drive around is on the track. We have unfortunately, we have a place to drive that car.
Back roads, baby.
We don't have, unfortunately where we live in Placer County, it's not like, I mean, where I grew up in the Mojave Desert, plenty of back roads, but up here, no. You have.
I use back roads for tuning all the time.
You do?
That's just me. But I'm also a crazy person, so I guess that's.
Yeah, but would he have to like data log
No,
That
what I would
fuel
suggest is
ratio
put up
or?
a camera
Okay.
and you just watch it.
Okay.
And you have the camera that's like showcasing your foot and like showcasing the thing, and then you got it both. You know, and that's getting you close enough. Or ideally, you just get down to time.
Yeah.
And you bring a bunch of jets with you and you
What's that?
dial it in.
Yeah.
Newcastle and Lincoln.
What, 295?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go down that with an unlicensed car. Loud? Hell no. The high patrol, they run up and down that road, yeah.
198's the worst for a while.
198.
Yeah.
That's way down south.
Okay, yeah.
But that's where all the Motor Trend stuff is shot.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, I see that. Being from Southern California, I go, oh, I know that road, or I know the area. Yeah.
There's that one and 33 the Horizon. It's like, that's where you're going to see a bunch of Ferraris and shit ripping around. And you're like,
Remember,
from?
Roadkill? They're early ones. They filmed
That's
them
where they were
out.
at.
They filmed them out by California City. That's where I grew up. And I said, oh, I know that road. I screwed around. I tried to break into a junkyard one night.
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
The old Highway 58.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, when you say you're working on a program that
I'm calibrating.
Calibrating.
you're calibrating,
The back-end program.
okay, sorry.
Yeah, he's not writing codes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not engine programming, it's engine calibration.
Okay, sorry. I'm a programming geek, so
So you're gonna fill in everything with programming.
that's what I'm trying to like learn because I'm trying to figure out whether they're using like a yes or no calculation, or basically just if statement and then this parameter, then it returns like it's fine, but or if they're using like a language model API where it basically sees what everybody else does that is acceptable and then it generates an output similar to it, like basically like how ChatGPT works.
The thing is that each of these companies is probably going to do something a little bit differently. So you're not going to have a general answer. You're going to want to talk to a specific company that you find comfortable. And you'll probably have to call around 3 or 4 times and say, find one that's going to tell you more detail, because they're not going to know. And then they're going to say, let me have my back-end software engineer call you. And then they're probably going to ask you for money to talk to them.
Yeah.
Because that guy's supposed to be programming. And it's just going to be one of the things where you're trying to do something that's more open source, and to do that, you'd be Speeduino, be Microsquare, Megasquare. That's not, in my opinion, not at a professional level, and I would not advise that for what you guys trying to do personally. It's just not the right approach. It's cool, it's a really fun function, but I would definitely say start with the finished product, learn, and then build up to that. Okay. Because I think you're approaching it the wrong direction, and it's going to get you in trouble. It's going to be a lot more rebuilding.
So pretty much kind of start with a vehicle that has already been tuned, then reverse engineer and see what they did and whatnot. Not reverse engineer, but learn from what they've done and kind of.
I'm saying start with the software.
Oh, software. I'm talking about tuning.
Then, like, because if you guys are trying to program for classes, like you've got the programming side, but you've got engine tuning and calibration, which is completely different. We're talking back end versus front end. It's different program languages, everything's different. So it's like if you design a website, some guy is doing the back end of that website, some guy's doing the front end of the website. It's not usually the same guy. 2 completely different jobs. So someone builds a foundation, someone builds a roof. And yeah, if you're doing it purely for learning for performance application, use something that's finished.
Okay.
If you're using it to learn to program or to do for your classes, start with the Speeduino, start with the open-ended stuff, open source. Anything's open source ECU, have at it.
So don't try to do both at the same time, basically. So just learn one first and then go to the other. Okay. Good advice.
Is Mazda Edit a open source? Mazda Edit?
I don't know. It might be.
I think because I remember a lot of people like upload tunes and share tunes and stuff like that, right?
That's not open source would be different than that. Yeah. So
where can I contact you
Easiest thing is probably I'll give you my Instagram and everything off of there. Is you get a bunch of business pages, YouTube page. I've got a huge hater base. Everyone hates me.
Why?
I probably have like hundreds of hours.
Are they just like?
I don't even answer people. There's no point. I'm just like, I'm just making cars run well. I don't care.
You know you're doing something right then.
That's probably true. If you go to Instagram, it'll be right now. So RGH2.
You did link too?
Yeah.
Right, this design?
Right, Brian design.
Is this right, Brian?
No.
It's an artistic approach to using your brain inside your brain.
Nice work. You've done a great job.
What about
I did wrong.
So I'm looking at different ECU options, right? Because my buddies are saying like mixed things about the stock ECU, the single turbo application, and from what I can see, or from what I read online in the forums, the only thing that the forums said, which I don't know whether to believe or not, is that only direct injection. The other one is that's currently out right now is Haltech, and I don't know if that's true.
They don't do anything direct.
They don't do that.
They do port injection.
They do port injection only.
So if you're doing a piggyback,
This place is open till midnight, by the way.
direct injection or factory
I know, but
into
Awesome. I appreciate everybody.
your own canvas.
It's not so bad. Only like 6 hours.
It gets really complicated.
All right, Matthew.
That's an expensive.
Thank you so much. I'll coordinate.
Stop.
Hey, that's
If you screw up, you're out 20 grand.
right on.
Don't do that.
I do have buddies that are looking to do it, or doing it. They actually have the money to spend to it. But I'm just in college now.
I'm not gonna sit on that offer for 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm sitting there.
It's on, the series there.
I don't think they're great questions. They got
Life's moving. Life's unpredictable. You gotta roll and punch and try those lanes.
This is. I enjoy the fact that I can kind of show you guys.
Are you ready to
This
roll?
is like a fraction. I told you it's like coming into Calculus 4 class. Like, hey, good luck.
Things.
Yeah, and I think the majority of the guys they probably didn't know what to ask just because you know they don't know.
Just put it wherever you're ready. I want everyone
I've
to
helped
not
some
be
of
able to
my
get it
one of
because I'm
my
not in here, but
like
if anybody.
street shooting some you know the Honda K series stuff. So I'll be driving the car for him.
Maybe we should do the coin
like I said,
flip for the
focus
prizes.
on the century data while I'm driving. You know, yeah, because I smashed in third gear. You know, I was like, okay, here we go. You know, so and he's showing me, all right, now this cell's too lean or too lean. You know, you should add 10% or whatever and stuff.
Can all the people that's still here break out a quarter?
Come together,
Not you.
all the peoples.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna do a coin flip for the prizes. We're here after the intended hour, so these are obviously real diehard people. Not that I was trying to save them or anything.
All I have is a nickel.
So,
Will that work?
everyone get out a quarter, and this is on the honor system. When you flip, let me see how many things. When you flip the coin, if you get tails, sit down. I have, but I have 6.
That was quick.
Wait, no, I have 6. I have 6 prizes and other bags. So. Oh yeah,
That was great.
and a template.
What,
Everyone gets a bag and a template. But
Tails goes forward, head sits, or what was it?
okay, everyone flip. Who got tails? You got tails? Tails, sit down. How many do we have left? Hold up your hand. 1, 2, 3.
Use your phone. Open up a heads tails flipping app. No.
Well, I'll flip for you.
That's what I did, and I got tails twice.
He got tails too.
I'm flipping pennies.
How many people are left?
Penny.
Heads.
Shoot. Okay, well, come over here.
Jeez Louise.
Oh no.
Okay, pick what you want.
Heads or tails?
And I've got also these other items. Now, be careful before you pick, because there's other items.
Other items? Oh, okay. Oh, is this just the first round? How many rounds are we doing? Oh, we got knocked out quick. A dial.
2 hours reading.
Dial indicator?
Oh, DVD.
Well, that's a winner.
That's a winner dinner, chicken dinner.
Right?
Well, we better flip.
Yeah, you guys gotta flip off for that.
We gotta flip off for this.
For first pick.
All right, so head stays?
Yeah, you
Head
guys
stays.
do that amongst yourselves.
Where'd that go?
As it lands,
What do you got?
Tails.
I got heads, baby. All right. What do we want, Matt?
Also,
and it's you, because you invited me. What do you want?
The run out. No, that thing.
The tool. All right, going home with the tool. All right. Nice.
look, you guys missed the best part.
Is there a dial indicator?
Look, second pick.
Hey, this is a practice piece. This is Malcolm. Malcolm left this. This is the one that has that broken through. Maybe you could take that for practicing porting.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Ask, unless he wants it.
I didn't get to practice pouring in the trailer.
Oh yeah, you want to practice before you start marketing it.
Good on this?
Yeah, dude. Thank you for helping that. In fact, I'm gonna shut off my video because I have an hour and a half video of